What happens when a family of straight-up street legends and kingpins raises the next generation? When your father is the notorious mob boss, a certified kingpin who built his own record label while running trap houses all over Memphis, and your bloodline carries the weight of murder cases, federal drug charges, and a reputation that makes grown men move different in the streets, this is the story of the Williams family, better known as the Shiesty clan. A family so locked in the game that when their youngest Pooh Shiesty started spitting bars about robbing ops and sliding on rivals, he wasn't just making music, he was chronicling a way of life. From mob boss's rise as one of Memphis's most feared kingpins to his ride-or-die mother cheering him on, this lifestyle runs in the blood. Through the tragic loss of TeeDa P in street wars that left bodies dropping, to federal cases that ripped the family apart, the Shiesties lived every headline. This is the untold story of how real gangsters raised a rap superstar who could never escape the very streets that shaped him. By the end of this video, you'll see why Pooh Shiesty never had a choice. He had to be exactly who he is. This family tree got roots deeper than any rap beef and branches that stretch into every dark corner of Memphis's most dangerous hoods. We're about to uncover the real story behind one of hip-hop's rawest voices. And trust me, the truth is wilder than anything he's ever spit. But before we dive into the Shiesty family saga, you gotta feel the streets that molded them. South Memphis, Tennessee, ain't just another hood. This city's murder rate is 7 times higher than the national average, with over 102 gangs running the block in a population of just 500,000. We're talking about 14,000 confirmed gang members. That's basically a small army locked and loaded across neighborhoods, divided by railroad tracks that mark deadly borders. The Williams family planted their flag in South Memphis, a stretch that runs from Midtown all the way to the Mississippi state line. It's one of the city's oldest and poorest areas, where your zip code alone can shave 20 years off your life expectancy. This is the environment that forged the Shiesties into the real ones they are today. This is the breeding ground that gave the world legends like Yo Gotti, Young Dolph, and Moneybagg Yo. But it's also where families like the Williams learned early that survival meant doing whatever it took. No questions asked. In Memphis, you're either predator or prey. And the Shiesties picked their lane from day one. The city sits at the crossroads of Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi, making it a prime hub for interstate drug trafficking. The I-55 corridor slices right through Memphis, connecting Chicago to New Orleans, and every major drug crew in the South has rolled through it at some point. For a family like the Williams, that was basically a highway to riches. But only if you had the brains and the ruthlessness to seize it. Memphis also has a gang culture unlike anywhere else. Instead of 1 or 2 dominant sets, the city is packed with every national gang you can name. Bloods, Crips, gangster disciples, vice lords, plus dozens of smaller neighborhood crews running their own blocks. That made the streets a constantly shifting chessboard of alliances, rivalries, and deadly moves, and the Shiesties learned how to play it better than most. In the streets, today's partner could be tomorrow's target. Lontrell Williams Sr, the man who would become known as Mob Boss, was already making moves in South Memphis when he met the woman who would become Pooh Shiesty's mother. Both were forged by the same ruthless streets, both knowing loyalty was everything, and weakness got you buried fast. Memphis in the late 90s was a whole different beast. The crack epidemic was still tearing through neighborhoods, and young hustlers like Mob Boss were learning the hard way. The drug game could make you rich, or leave you 6 feet under. Sometimes it did both. But Mob Boss wasn't just another corner boy chasing quick flips and street clout. He had vision. He was building something bigger. Mob Boss understood a truth many street dudes never catch. Legitimacy is the key to survival. That's why he founded Mob Ties Records, his own independent label, knowing music could be the perfect cover for his real moves. It gave him a reason to travel, a way to justify big cash, and most importantly, a path to respect that didn't always demand violence. When he met Pooh Shiesty's mother, she wasn't some naive girl swept up in a hustler's world. Nah, she was already plugged into the streets, already knew the rules of the game. Their connection wasn't about romance or flowers. It was forged in respect, loyalty, and a shared understanding of what it took to survive in South Memphis. The couple set up shop in the Cane Creek projects, right in the heart of the struggle. This wasn't a suburban love story. This was two soldiers building an empire in a war zone. Their bond was constantly tested by federal investigations, rival crews trying to snatch territory, and the ever-present weight of knowing every day could be their last. What made them unstoppable was their shared vision for family. They both knew the streets were a means to an end, not the end itself. They wanted to build something that could provide for their kids and grandkids, a legacy that could survive, even if they didn't. To understand Pooh Shiesty, you first gotta understand his father. Mob Boss wasn't just playing gangster for the cameras. This man was certified in these streets. His operation ran so deep that it took federal agents months of surveillance just to scratch the surface of how far his network reached. That nickname, Mob Boss, wasn't some catchy tag. It was earned through years of moving weight and commanding respect all across Memphis. His connections stretched from the Mississippi Delta to the Arkansas border, with the I-55 interstate serving as his personal highway for distribution. His network included truck drivers ready to move product across state lines, corrupt officials giving him tips on law enforcement moves. Mob Boss ran his business like a true strategist. He knew the biggest mistake most dealers make is getting high on their own supply, literally and figuratively. While other crews flexed with flashy cash and ran wild with violence, Mob Boss operated like a CEO, calculated, controlled, and always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. He invested in real estate, flipping properties across South Memphis into stash houses and secret meeting spots. He ran legit businesses too, ways to explain his income and provide work for his crew. But the most important thing, Mob Boss knew the key to staying untouchable was flying under law enforcement's radar, while still stacking serious revenue. But the story takes a dark twist in 2004, when he got caught up in one of Memphis's most shocking murder cases. Rebecca Glenn, a 24-year-old radio DJ for Q 1070.5, was found strangled in her apartment. The killer? Stanley Andrews. Yet according to police reports, Mob Boss was charged as an accessory after the fact. Here's where it gets messy. Word on the streets was that Rebecca had been spinning Yo Gotti's music, but refusing to give Mob Boss or his mob ties artists airtime in Memphis. Radio play wasn't just promotion. It was the difference between a local hustler rapping for respect and a real artist making serious cash. Some say Mob Boss put a hit out on the DJ for the disrespect, but that was never proven in court. What we do know is that after Rebecca's murder, Mob Boss and a woman named Marquita Thomas were caught using her credit cards and helping sell her stolen belongings. The case sent shockwaves through Memphis. Even Stanley Andrews' own sister couldn't believe what her brother had done. She told Action News 5 that he called her from jail, saying Rebecca went off on him for knocking on her door, so he just snapped. But Andrews showed zero remorse, acting like he fully understood what he had done. Investigators found he had slipped past building security and wandered the halls knocking on random doors. When Rebecca answered, Andrews forced his way inside, wrapped his hands around her neck, and strangled her before robbing her apartment. Mob Boss got hit with accessory charges and first-degree forgery, but he played it smart and managed to walk away with just a year of supervised probation. That light sentence should have been a wake-up call, but for a man like Mob Boss, the streets were calling too loud to ignore. By 2007, Mob Boss was back at it, but this time on a whole new level. He had built a sophisticated drug operation out of an apartment at 784 Porter Street in Memphis. The Memphis Police Department had been watching that spot for months, tracking everyone who came and went, mapping patterns and building their case. Detective Kittrell Robinson would later testify about the intense surveillance operation they ran before finally rolling in with search warrants. They saw constant traffic day and night. Cars pulling up, someone slipping inside for a few minutes, then bouncing. The pattern screamed retail drug operation, but the volume suggested something way bigger than street-level dealing. Now, picture this. Cops crash through the front door and chaos erupts instantly. Our boss's cousin, Rico Johnson, bolts from apartment 4 to 3, glass shattering as someone dives out the kitchen window. But the wildest part? A 75-pound pit bull comes charging around the corner, straight at the officers. Detective Robinson had to fire 3 shots before the animal backed off, only to collapse dead in the kitchen. Absolute mayhem in every corner. Outside, it looked abandoned, but inside, a fully functioning trap house. The location was no accident. Porter Street was a dead end in a neighborhood with little police presence and residents who minded their own business. The building itself looked run down and unlivable, which was exactly the point. Who would suspect a major drug operation was running out of a place that looked ready to be condemned? The pit bull wasn't just a pet, it was part of the security system and the drug operation. A vicious dog does more than scare people off. It deters robbery attempts, warns of police raids, and can even destroy evidence if trained right. The fact that this dog lunged at armed officers shows just how well it was trained. When the smoke cleared, police found a full-blown operation. 12.5 grams of cocaine, 8 pounds of high-grade marijuana, digital scales on the kitchen counter, and measuring cups by the stove for cooking. A Smith & Wesson on the couch, and $10,000 cash in mob boss's front pocket confirmed this wasn't a small-time hustle. It was a professional setup. Every detail screamed precision. The crack cooking equipment meant mob boss was running the full spectrum of the drug trade, from casual weed smokers to hardcore addicts. The commercial-grade digital scales could measure large quantities with exact precision, and the measuring cups and kitchen tools proved they were converting raw cocaine into crack, a process that required serious chemistry knowledge and hands-on skill. This was a top-tier, fully equipped operation ready to move major weight. This wasn't amateur hour. This was a fully loaded, sophisticated manufacturing and distribution operation. The $10,000 cash was just what mob boss had on him when they rolled up. Investigators suspected way bigger stacks moved through the operation regularly, but the main stash was never found. The apartment was set up like a fortress. Multiple escape routes, reinforced doors, and security cameras keeping an eye on every car rolling down the street. This operation was planned by someone who knew the streets and law enforcement inside and out. While mob boss was making headlines for his legal troubles, Pooh Shiesty's mother was holding down her own respect in the streets. This wasn't some innocent bystander caught up in her man's world. She was a certified gangster in her own right. In Memphis, the streets don't respect weakness, and any woman standing next to a man like mob boss had to prove she could handle whatever came with that life. She understood the game, and she played it as hard as anyone. She understood the risks. And in their world, family loyalty meant everything. Growing up in South Memphis, she had seen what happened to women who couldn't protect themselves or their families. She'd watched mothers lose their kids to the streets, wives disrespected by their husbands' enemies, and families ripped apart by violence in prison. She was determined that wouldn't be her story. While mob boss was facing federal time, she kept the family tight. She handled the money, managed relationships with key players in the organization, and protected their reputation while he fought his case. That took street intelligence and political skill most people never even developed. She also had to shield her kids. Young Pooh Shiesty was watching everything, learning from every move, every interaction, absorbing lessons about loyalty, respect, and survival. She made sure he knew their family was different, that they carried a legacy, and that their name came with a standard that had to be honored. While mob boss was locked up, she kept his name ringing loud in the streets. She made sure every enemy knew the organization was still active, still dangerous, and not to be tested. That meant making decisions most people could never imagine, actions with life or death consequences. Her influence on Pooh Shiesty can't be overstated. Mob boss taught him the business side of the streets, but his mother taught him survival, loyalty, never showing weakness, and how to stand tall even when the world is trying to crush you. She also valued education and legitimate opportunities, making sure he understood the streets were a means to an end, not the end itself. She kept Pooh Shiesty in school while running a criminal organization, earning respect through years of proving herself in situations where one wrong move could have meant death. She navigated federal investigations, rival crews, and internal betrayals, all while keeping her family safe, her reputation untouchable, and the operation profitable. Before we dive into Pooh Shiesty's rise, we have to talk about the family's most devastating loss. TeeDa P's older brother was more than just family. He was Pooh's role model, his inspiration, and the one who showed him what it truly meant to be a Williams. TeeDa P was already making moves in the streets while Pooh Shiesty was still figuring out his path. He had that natural charisma and street intelligence that runs deep in the family, and everyone who knew him could see he was destined for something big. Unlike many young men in the neighborhood, TeeDa P had the rare mix of street credibility and business sense that could have taken him far. He was the bridge between mob bosses' old-school grind and the new generation's way of running the game. While his father focused on traditional drug trafficking and territorial control, TeeDa P knew the future was in diversification, music, legitimate business, and building wealth that law enforcement couldn't touch. He was also deeply involved in Choppa Gang's early operations, helping plan their most successful moves, guiding territorial expansion, and mentoring younger members who looked up to the Williams name. He wasn't just living the legacy, he was shaping it. But life in Memphis is unpredictable, and TeeDa P's story took a heartbreaking turn when he was diagnosed with brain cancer. This wasn't an enemy you could shoot or outrun. It was a battle that demanded a different kind of strength. The diagnosis hit suddenly. TeeDa P had been dealing with headaches and vision problems, but in their world, showing weakness or admitting pain wasn't an option. By the time he finally saw a doctor, the cancer had already advanced for months. TeeDa P fought with everything he had. Street smarts and grit weren't enough against this enemy. The family rallied around him, praying for a miracle and hoping for more time. They brought in the best doctors money could buy, explored experimental treatments, and tried every option imaginable. Pooh Shiesty watched his hero, his big brother, slowly fighting a war that no amount of street credibility could ever help him win. It was a humbling moment for a young man raised to believe that violence and money could solve anything. The medical bills were crushing, even for a family with serious resources. Treatments meant traveling to specialized facilities, paying for experimental drugs not covered by insurance, and round-the-clock care that drained both money and emotional energy. Meanwhile, Pooh Shiesty's music career was just starting to rise. Every early hit should have been a celebration, but it was shadowed by his brother's failing health. Every milestone felt bittersweet, knowing TeeDa P might never see him reach his full potential. When TeeDa P finally lost his battle in January 2021, it broke something inside Pooh Shiesty. On his track, No Chorus, you can hear the raw pain in his voice as he raps about God. I shed a tear every time I think about TeeDa P. But no, I won't show my feelings. The timing made it even worse. TeeDa P died right in the middle of Pooh Shiesty's beef with EBG, and his enemies tried to use his brother's death as ammo in their diss tracks. EBG Dizzle even dropped a song called Paralyzed right after TeeDa P's passing, with lyrics telling Pooh to go pray for your brother. That kind of disrespect during a time of grief showed Pooh exactly the type of people he was up against. It also hardened his heart in ways that shaped every decision he'd make moving forward. The loss of TeeDa P wasn't just personal. It was a declaration of war against anyone who disrespected his family's pain. Born November 8th, 1999, Lontrell Williams Sr. entered a world where violence was normal and survival demanded constant vigilance. By the time Pooh Shiesty was 4, his father was already facing murder charges. By 7, mob boss was getting raided by federal agents and going to prison for drug trafficking. This is the environment that molded young Pooh Shiesty. While other kids worried about homework and video games, he was learning lessons most people never have to face. He watched his father command respect through fear and intelligence. He saw how money and power could protect your family, but also how quickly it could vanish. The Cane Creek projects where Pooh Shiesty grew up were more than apartments. They were fortified communities. Residents looked out for each other, and outsiders were treated with suspicion. The Williams family's name carried weight, providing protection but also heavy expectations. From early on, Pooh Shiesty understood he represented more than just himself. He carried the Williams legacy, which meant something in South Memphis. Every move he made, every way he handled disrespect, every action toward friends and enemies, It was all being watched. Every move he made reflected on his family's legacy. By 11, when most kids were still playing with toys, Pooh Shiesty caught his first robbery charge. This wasn't some random act of juvenile delinquency. It was planned, precise, and targeted someone who had disrespected his family. Even as a kid, he understood that certain violations couldn't be ignored. That same year, he got expelled from middle school for bringing a gun to campus. The weapon wasn't for show. It was protection. Pooh Shiesty had already received threats from older kids whose families were beefing with the Williams organization, and he wasn't about to be caught defenseless. These weren't cries for help or teenage rebellion. This was a young man learning to survive in the only way he knew how. In most neighborhoods, an 11-year-old with a gun would be seen as a tragedy. In South Memphis, it was seen as preparation. The streets don't give you time to be a child. Pooh Shiesty himself said that in Memphis, you're guaranteed to lose at least one close friend to violence before you turn 15. That's not a statistic. That's a promise the city hands every young person trying to survive. By 14, he had another assault case. Details were sealed since he was a minor, but word on the streets was that he had severely beaten someone for disrespecting his incarcerated father. The message was clear. Even with mob boss behind bars, the Williams family wasn't to be tested. When Pooh Shiesty hit high school at Central High, he had to deal with kids from other neighborhoods. Memphis gangs were divided by railroad tracks, and high school was where those borders started getting crossed. That's when Pooh Shiesty and his childhood friend Big 30 decided to form their own crew, Choppa Gang. Don't get it twisted. Choppa Gang wasn't some rap group or social club. This was a real street organization focused on getting money by any means necessary. As Pooh Shiesty put it, they were young, hungry, and willing to do whatever it took to build their empire. Choppa Gang represented a new generation of Memphis street politics. Unlike older gangs tied to neighborhoods or national affiliations, Choppa Gang was built on personal relationships and shared ambition. They recruited the smartest, most ruthless young men from across South Memphis, creating a hybrid crew that blended traditional gang structure with modern business tactics. By the time Pooh Shiesty graduated high school, Choppa Gang was moving serious weight through multiple illegal enterprises. These weren't just corner boys selling dime bags. They were running sophisticated operations that required planning, coordination, and the ruthless efficiency Pooh Shiesty had learned by watching his father. Their first major score came from robbing drug dealers in rival territories. Pooh Shiesty knew the best targets were people who couldn't call the cops, other criminals who had to handle their losses quietly. Choppa Gang studied their targets for weeks, learning routines, spotting weaknesses, and planning attacks with military-level precision. The money was heavy, but it came at a cost. Every successful lick brought more eyes on them, from rivals and law enforcement alike. Every dollar earned had to be protected through violence or the threat of it. This is when Pooh Shiesty started building the reputation that would later make his music feel so real. One of their most notorious early jobs was hitting a high-level dealer moving serious weight through South Memphis without showing respect to the established powers. This guy had out-of-state connections and was generating hundreds of thousands in revenue, but he made the mistake of thinking money made him untouchable. Choppa Gang spent 3 weeks studying his operation, learning when he re-upped, where the stash was hidden, who provided security, and what routes he used to move product and cash. When they finally struck, it was executed with the precision of a military operation. The robbery scored them over $200,000 in cash and several kilograms of high-grade cocaine. But more importantly, it put Choppa Gang on the map as a force to be respected in Memphis's criminal underworld. Word spread fast. These weren't random stick-up kids. They were organized, smart, and extremely dangerous. But success came with new challenges. Rival crews started targeting Choppa Gang, trying to rob them or take them out as competition. Law enforcement began tracking their moves, building files, and looking for ways to take them down. Most dangerously, their rise caught the attention of established criminal organizations who saw them as a threat to their territory. Pooh Shiesty handled these challenges the way his father taught him, calculated violence and strategic moves. In the streets, reputation is everything. Show weakness once and everyone tests you. Respond with overwhelming force and most problems solve themselves. He wasn't rapping about a lifestyle he imagined. He was documenting experiences that had shaped his entire world. When he talked about sliding on ops, robbing enemies, and staying ready for war, it wasn't fantasy. It was real life. The streets taught Pooh Shiesty that respect is earned through action, not words. That loyalty was worth more than money. Showing weakness, even for a second, could get you and everyone you loved killed. These were lessons that would serve Pooh Shiesty well in the music industry, but they also brought problems that money and fame couldn't fix. The beef between Pistis, Choppa Gang, and EBG. This wasn't some social media drama, it was a real street war with real consequences. Both crews were from Memphis, but they represented different sides of the city and totally different approaches to the game. EBG was rooted in North Memphis, while Choppa Gang claimed South Memphis. In a city where railroad tracks serve as gang borders, that divide meant everything. These weren't just rival rappers. They were enemy soldiers who had been at war long before either side picked up a mic. The conflict ran deep, rooted in territorial battles over drug routes and retail corners. North and South Memphis crews had been fighting for decades over the most profitable spots and the right to tax independent dealers in disputed areas. EBG had built themselves into one of North Memphis's dominant forces through a mix of violence and business savvy. They controlled high-traffic drug corners, had connections to major suppliers, and kept discipline in their ranks through fear and respect. Choppa Gang represented a new generation. They didn't honor old territorial boundaries. They believed money was up for grabs for anyone smart and ruthless enough to take it, no matter what neighborhood they came from or which crew had historically controlled the area. The conflict escalated when Pooh Shiesty and his crew allegedly ran through EBG's territory, hitting them for guns and drugs. This wasn't just about cash. It was about disrespect. Choppa Gang was showing EBG they could violate their space anytime they wanted. According to street sources, the hit was planned for weeks. Members surveilled EBG's main stash house, learned guard schedules, spotted security weaknesses, and mapped out multiple escape routes. When they finally struck, it was overwhelming. Choppa Gang moved like a military unit, surrounding the location, neutralizing security, and walking away with a major haul of weapons and drugs before EBG could even mount a response. Precision, power, and respect all rolled into one flawless operation. The message was loud and clear. The old rules no longer apply, and Choppa Gang was taking whatever they wanted. When Pooh Shiesty dropped back in blood with Lil Durk, he spit the line. Yeah, you know who took that shit from you? Come get it back in blood. To most listeners, it sounded like typical rap bravado, but EBG knew exactly what he was talking about, and they couldn't let that level of disrespect slide. The song went global, hitting number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 and racking up hundreds of millions of streams. That meant their humiliation was being broadcast worldwide. Every place celebrated EBG's defeat in front of millions. EBG Grizzle, who wasn't even a serious rapper, had to respond. He dropped a remix claiming Pooh was exaggerating, saying the robbery wasn't as big as the song made it seem. According to E Dizzle, Choppa Gang had only stolen a small stash of drugs and a few guns, and no one was even home during the hit. He tried to paint Pooh Shiesty as someone inflating minor wins into major conquests, but Pooh wasn't backing down. On social media, he posted that EBG had made the worst mistake of their lives by responding, bragged about getting 18 million views without even mentioning their names, and warned them that things were about to get way worse. The beef hit a dangerous peak when E Shizzle got shot 3 times in the arm, just days after dropping his second diss track. Rumors spread instantly, and Pooh Shiesty took to social media with cryptic messages like, "Damn, that nene diss now. He can't even walk. I don't even think bro talking." The shooting went down in broad daylight on a busy North Memphis street. Witnesses say E Shizzle was walking to his car when a vehicle pulled up and someone opened fire. The shooter masked, vanished immediately, but the message was clear. Disrespect Choppa Gang, and there would be consequences. E Grizzle survived and responded with another diss track called Paralyzed, claiming, Whoever shot me had a clear shot on my face and still went for my arm, signaling it was meant as a warning, not a kill. The ongoing beef turned Memphis into a city on edge. Members of both crews were constantly watching their backs, knowing any public appearance could erupt into violence. The conflict also pulled in other crews with alliances on either side, turning what started as a dispute between two organizations into a full-blown citywide war. Before the EBG war fully exploded, Pooh Shiesty had already built a reputation as someone who didn't tolerate disrespect from any Memphis rapper. His beef with Big Boogie started over something small to outsiders. But in Memphis, respect is everything. Big Boogie, signed to Yo Gotti's CMG label, made the mistake of claiming on Instagram Live that he was a better rapper than Pooh Shiesty. In most cities, that's just competitive talk, but in Memphis, that's a direct challenge that demands a response. The comment came when Pooh Shiesty was just starting to get national attention. His early tracks were popping locally, but he hadn't yet hit mainstream. For an established artist like Big Boogie to publicly dismiss him, that was a clear attempt to stunt his growth and keep him in his place. Pooh Shiesty and Big 30 immediately rolled up on Big Boogie's live session to confront him. The exchange got heated, with Pooh claiming that when he pulled up to Boogie's neighborhood, Big Boogie ran scared. According to Pooh's version, he actually drove into Fraser, Big Boogie's North Memphis neighborhood, looking for a face-to-face showdown. When Big Boogie saw him coming, he allegedly bolted. But instead of owning up, Big Boogie denied it ever happened, claiming he had never met Pooh Shiesty in person and didn't understand why there was beef. He said he had no real issues with Pooh and that the whole thing was blown out of proportion. To make the disrespect personal, Pooh Shiesty launched his own weed brand called Red Rum, the same name as Big Boogie's crew. That way, he could literally say he was smoking on that red rum pack and mean it. This petty move showed just how seriously Pooh took any form of disrespect. The packaging featured graphics mocking Big Boogie and his crew, and Pooh pushed it hard on social media. Every sale of Red Rum wasn't just a product. It was a public clapback at Big Boogie's organization. The tension hit a tragic climax on July 12, 2020, when Big Boogie was performing at a concert in Cuomo, Mississippi. During Big Boogie's performance, chaos erupted. Over 50 shots fired from 5 different weapons. Big Boogie wasn't hit, but 2 innocent lives were lost. 19-year-old Jasmine Bradshaw and 37-year-old L.V. Wilborn. The shooting was clearly planned and coordinated. 5 guns meant multiple shooters working together, and the volume of fire proved this was no random act. Someone had come to that concert with the specific intention of targeting Big Boogie. Jasmine Bradshaw, one of the victims, was reportedly his pregnant girlfriend. She was on stage with him when the shooting began, making her death especially tragic. Her pregnancy added another layer of heartbreak to an already horrific scene. Many suspected the attack was retaliation for the beef with Pooh Shiesty. He went on Instagram Live to deny involvement, saying their issues weren't that deep. Whether he was telling the truth or just covering legally, the message was chilling. Crossing Pooh Shiesty or his crew could have deadly consequences. The denial was strategic but not entirely convincing. The shooting happened just weeks after the public beef, making a connection hard to ignore. Still, without concrete evidence linking Pooh Shiesty to the attack, law enforcement couldn't pursue charges. The incident exposed the deadly overlap between rap beef and real street violence. What starts as competitive bars can quickly turn into life-or-death situations when the artists involved have real street credibility and access to weapons. Pooh Shiesty didn't start rapping dreaming of fame. Music was just another hustle, another way to stack money for Choppa Gang. His first recorded verse appeared on Big 30's track Breaking News in 2018. Even with simple beats and basic production, Pooh's raw talent immediately stood out. The song was recorded at a local Memphis studio using money Choppa Gang had earned from the streets. His flow was effortless, his lyrics authentic, and his delivery intense. Realness that couldn't be faked. Breaking News went up on YouTube with almost no promotion but quickly gained traction locally. DJs started spinning it, other rappers took notice, and fans began asking who the young rapper with that distinctive voice was. His official debut single, Hell Night featuring Big Dirty, showed that Pooh Shiesty had found his signature sound, a gritty, menacing flow that perfectly matched the violent reality of his lyrics. The music video, shot by SMB Films, racked up over 6 million views, putting Memphis on notice. A new star was rising. The video was filmed in the very neighborhoods where Pooh Shiesty grew up and ran his early operations. You could see the Cane Creek projects in the background, the same streets where he had learned to survive, the same corners where Choppa Gang ran their business. What made Pooh Shiesty different from other Memphis rappers was authenticity. While many artists exaggerated their criminal past for clout, Pooh was actually living the life he rapped about. His lyrics weren't fantasies, they were confessions. But it was Back in Blood with Lil Durk that changed everything, recorded at Savage and Care Studio in Atlanta. The collab almost happened by accident. Pooh laid down his hook and verse, then ran it over to Durk in another room. Durk heard it once and dropped his verse within 5 minutes. The chemistry was immediate and undeniable. Durk's melodic style perfectly complemented Pooh Shiesty's aggressive delivery, creating a track that hit both street audiences and mainstream listeners hard. The song dropped on November 6, 2020, the same day King Von was killed in Atlanta. While the hip-hop world was focused on that tragedy, Back in Blood quietly began its climb. The track eventually peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 6 on the Hip-Hop Hot 100, racking up hundreds of millions of streams. The success opened doors Pooh Shiesty had never imagined. Record labels started calling, booking agents wanted shows, and major artists reached out for collabs. Suddenly, the young man from Cane Creek Projects was being courted by some of hip-hop's biggest names. Gucci Mane's 1017 label was a perfect fit for Pooh's style and image. Gucci, having lived the streets himself before becoming a rap legend, understood authentic street music better than most executives. He saw in Pooh the same raw talent and real street credibility that had made his own career possible. Signing to 1017 came with a major label deal through Atlantic Records, giving Pooh Shiesty access to resources, promotion, and opportunities that independent artists could only dream of. Suddenly, Pooh Shiesty had a team of professionals working to maximize his potential and grow his audience. For him, the success was proof that his authentic street stories could hit mainstream without compromise. He wasn't changing his content or softening his image. He was getting paid millions to be exactly who he'd always been. Success brought money Pooh had only dreamed of during his days running the streets. His debut mixtape Shiesty Season peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200, selling over 60,000 copies in his first week. The young man from Cane Creek Projects was now earning in a month what most people never see in a lifetime. The financial transformation was immediate and dramatic. Pooh went from counting thousands to stacking millions, from worrying about rent to buying multiple properties, from hustling cars to collecting luxury vehicles. One of the first things he did with his newfound wealth, take care of his family, making sure the people who had held him down were provided for first. He bought his parents a house, making sure they could live comfortably without worrying about the dangers of the streets. For a family that had struggled through poverty, federal cases, and constant violence, this was a level of security they'd never known. The house wasn't just a symbol of success, it was a fortress. Located in an upscale neighborhood far from the projects where they grew up, it featured state-of-the-art security, bulletproof windows, and multiple escape routes. Even in success, the Williams family knew their enemies hadn't forgotten them. Gucci Mane's 1017 label gave Pooh Shiesty the platform and resources to reach a global audience. But he never forgot his roots. He brought his cousin Big Scar into the music business, getting him signed to the same label, even with no prior rap experience. The move was controversial. Critics said Big Scar only got the deal because of his connection to Pooh, not talent. Pooh didn't care. Loyalty came first. The money also let Pooh live the lifestyle he'd always dreamed of. Expensive cars, designer clothes, jewelry worth more than most people's houses. His Instagram feed became a showcase of wealth and excess. Diamond chain, luxury watches, and exotic cars on full display, letting everyone see the grind had paid off. But that lifestyle came with serious risks. The more wealth Pooh Shiesty flaunted, the bigger target he became. Other criminals saw his success as an opportunity, and law enforcement viewed his spending as evidence of ongoing criminal activity. The jewelry alone, custom chains, diamond-encrusted watches, and grills, was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. His exotic cars became part of his public image, but each ride was a security risk. McLarens, Lamborghinis, and other luxury vehicles cost more than most people's houses, making him a prime target for carjackers and kidnappers. People's homes also appeared regularly in his videos and social posts, further broadcasting his wealth. Despite the danger, Pooh refused to tone it down. He had grown up with nothing and wasn't about to hide his success. Every chain, every car, every flashy moment was a statement. He had made it, and he was going to enjoy every bit of it, no matter who was watching. The money meant more than just wealth. It was proof Pooh Shiesty had escaped the cycle of poverty and violence that trapped previous generations of his family. But with all that success came responsibility, and the same streets that made him were watching to see if fame and fortune would change him. It wasn't a question of whether he could make money. He had already proven that. The real test was whether he could hold on to it and stay alive long enough to enjoy it. Despite millions in the bank and a booming music career, Pooh couldn't completely leave the streets behind. The same survival mindset that got him through Memphis now threatened everything he had built. On October 9th, 2021, he ended up in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida, in a situation that would change his life forever. Police reports say Pooh and two associates drove a green McLaren to meet two men selling sneakers and marijuana. The sellers were also there to collect rent money for the car Pooh had been driving, a meeting that seemed routine but would turn catastrophic. The meeting was supposed to be routine. Pooh Shiesty needed high-end sneakers for an upcoming music video, and the sellers had a reputation for rare, authentic merchandise. The marijuana was just extra, a small bonus to make the trip worth it. But something went wrong. According to the victims, Pooh and his crew decided to rob them instead. What should have been a simple transaction turned into a nightmare. Surveillance video shows the green McLaren pulling into the lot, followed by a Mercedes carrying the sellers. Multiple people were standing around, appearing to conduct normal business. Then chaos erupted. Pooh's associates pulled out a Draco and another handgun, opening fire on the sellers. One victim was hit in the buttocks, the other while trying to run back to the Mercedes. The shooting was fast, brutal, and left both victims wounded and traumatized. The most damning evidence? Pooh and his crew fled, but left behind a Louis Vuitton bag containing over $30,000 in cash. Police traced serial numbers on some of the bills back to photos Pooh had posted on social media, directly linking him to the crime scene. The abandoned bag suggested this robbery wasn't fully planned. It spiraled out of control fast. If Pooh Shiesty had planned to rob the sellers, he wouldn't have shown up with $30,000 in cash. Something went wrong during the transaction, sparking a split-second decision to use violence instead of paying. But that wasn't the only incident showing how his street mindset clashed with his fame. On May 30th, 2021, Pooh was at King of Diamonds strip club in Miami when $40,000 allegedly fell from his waistband. When patrons rushed to grab it, he erupted. In his mind, the money was his, no matter how it hit the floor, and anyone who touched it was robbing him, a robbery demanding a violent response. Security tried to remove him, but Pooh wasn't going quietly. He allegedly shot a guard in the leg, turning a minor scuffle into a felony assault case. Dozens of witnesses, including other celebrities and their entourages, saw it go down. Cell phone footage captured his involvement, giving law enforcement solid evidence. And there was a third incident that flew under the radar, but was just as revealing. On July 7th, 2020, Pooh Shiesty was charged with discharging a firearm from a vehicle at a gas station, showing once again how quickly his street instincts could turn dangerous situations into headline-making crimes. According to police reports, Pooh Shiesty had gotten into an argument and decided to settle it with gunfire. The pattern was obvious. Despite having more money than he'd ever dreamed of, he was still operating with the same street mindset that got him out of the projects. He couldn't separate the survivor from Memphis streets from the artist who was supposed to represent a better life. Each incident revealed a man who had never learned to walk away from conflict. In the streets, backing down could get you killed. But in the legitimate world, not every slight required violence. The irony? Pooh had everything he'd ever wanted: money, fame, respect, and the ability to provide for his family. Yet the very traits that fueled his rise now threatened to destroy it. The Bay Harbor Islands incident led to serious federal charges: armed robbery with a firearm, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, aggravated assault with a firearm, and theft. The streets that built him were now the same ones putting his freedom on the line. Initially facing up to 20 years behind bars, Pooh Shiesty eventually accepted a plea deal that sentenced him to 63 months, just over 5 years. The federal charges were serious because they involved firearms and crossed state lines. Traveling from one state to another to commit the crimes elevated them to federal offenses, which carry much harsher penalties than state charges. His lawyer, Bradford Cohen, who had previously defended Lil Wayne and Kodak Black on federal gun cases, tried to discredit the victims. He pointed out inconsistencies in their stories and questioned their credibility, highlighting that they were drug dealers who might have had motives to lie. Cohen suggested that the shooting could have been self-defense, arguing that Pooh Shiesty had even left $30,000 at the scene. Hardly the move of someone planning a robbery. But the prosecution had solid evidence. Surveillance footage captured the shooting, and social media posts tied Pooh directly to the money found at the scene. With the case stacked against him, his legal team advised taking the plea. The judge initially set a $30,000 bond, which Pooh posted immediately, marking the start of a federal sentence that would keep the Memphis rapper off the streets for years. He and his crew boarded a private jet and left Florida, but the legal troubles didn't stop. Pooh Shiesty was arrested for the King of Diamond shooting, and his bond got revoked, forcing him to sit in jail until his trial. The King of Diamond case added a whole new layer of chaos to his legal situation. Now he was facing charges in multiple jurisdictions for separate incidents, making it harder than ever to strike a favorable plea deal. The prosecution had ironclad evidence, multiple eyewitnesses and cell phone videos clearly showing Pooh Shiesty firing the gun at the security guard. This happened in a packed nightclub loaded with cameras, leaving zero room for denial. On January 3, 2023, Pooh Shiesty was sentenced to 63 months in federal prison. The judge also ordered 3 years of supervised release, during which he cannot associate with known gang members or co-defendants. He's required to complete alcohol treatment programs, and the restrictions hit hard for someone with his street background. He can't roll with Choppa Gang, including close friends and family, and he can't travel without his probation officer's permission. The streets that built him were now dictating every move he could make. For a 23-year-old at the peak of his career, 5 years behind bars is a huge chunk of his prime earning years. Hip-hop moves fast, and artists who disappear for a stretch often struggle to regain their momentum. The financial hit goes beyond lost tours and record sales. Legal fees for high-profile federal cases easily run into the millions, and Pooh Shiesty's team of top-tier attorneys didn't come cheap. Federal prison is a whole different world from the streets of Memphis, but Pooh Shiesty has adapted the same way his family taught him to adapt to any situation. He's using the time to reflect on the choices that put him there and to plan his comeback. The prison system is designed to break people down and rebuild them on its terms. For someone like Pooh, who's never been controlled, the adjustment is brutal. Every day is regimented. Wake-up calls, meals, work assignments, and recreation periods are all scheduled, monitored, and enforced. But even behind bars, the lessons he learned growing up in South Memphis keep him calculating, observing, and planning his next move. In federal prison, breaking the rules comes with real consequences: extra time, lost privileges, or getting locked down even harder. But Pooh Shiesty hasn't been wasting his days. Instead of crashing out, he's been finding ways to stay productive. He's been writing new lyrics, sketching out future projects, and sharpening his sound in a way he never could, while caught up in non-stop street drama and court cases. That isolation hit different. With fewer distractions, Pooh finally had time to really lock in on his craft and think long-term instead of just surviving the moment. And even behind bars, his name never faded. His team kept the machine moving, dropping music like Shiesty Season, Certified, packed with features from Gucci Mane, Lil Durk, and Jack Harlow. The numbers didn't lie. Streams stayed high, fans stayed locked in, and his social media kept growing. That loyalty proved his brand was bigger than his physical presence. Prison also forced him to confront a hard truth. The same cycle that trapped generations before him. His father, mob boss, did federal time, and now Pooh was walking that same path, staring straight at the legacy he inherited and the future he still has to decide. The real question is whether he can finally break the cycle when he gets released. Letters and interviews from behind the wall show that Pooh Shiesty understands how serious this moment is. He's spoken about the pain his actions caused to victims and their families, while also admitting his choices were shaped by a lifetime in an environment where violence felt normal and unavoidable. That kind of honesty doesn't come easy. Prison also forced him to reconnect with family in ways fame never allowed. Phone calls, visits, and long conversations strengthened bonds with his parents and surviving siblings. But at the same time, the system hardened him. Federal prison isn't soft. It's full of dangerous people, and survival demands nonstop awareness every single day. Inside, his fame meant nothing. No chains, no money, no status, just respect earned minute by minute. Pooh had to prove himself all over again. His projected release date is 2027, assuming good behavior and program completion. When he comes home, the real test begins. Rebuilding his career while staying clean, focused, and far away from the same trouble that almost took everything. The entire hip-hop world will be watching to see if prison really changed him, or if Pooh Shiesty falls back into the same patterns that landed him behind bars in the first place. His team has worked overtime to keep his name alive, and his fan base solid. But the real test won't happen online. It'll happen when he's back outside, face to face with the same temptations that once wrecked his momentum. The industry didn't pause while he was gone. New artists popped up, streaming platforms evolved, and fan tastes shifted fast. Pooh Shiesty will have to adapt without losing the raw edge that made people lock in from day one. Staying authentic while moving smarter is the challenge, and that balance won't come easy. Family will matter more than ever. His father, older and more experienced now, may finally be in a position to offer guidance on enjoying success without crashing out. His mother's strength and loyalty remain a steady foundation, and the loss of TuP still hangs heavy, a reminder that life is fragile, time is limited, and second chances don't come often. What he builds next could define everything. Pooh Shiesty now has a real chance to honor his brother's memory by creating instead of destroying. The supervised release rules won't make that easy. He'll be blocked from linking up with many of his old friends and forced to build a new circle. People who aren't tied to street life or risky moves. That kind of separation hits hard when loyalty has always meant everything. But Pooh also has advantages most returning inmates never get. A legit music career is still waiting. Real financial backing is in place, and a loyal fan base is ready for his comeback. If he stays locked in on music and avoids old temptations, he could come back bigger, smarter, and more powerful than before. The real question is whether the lesson finally stuck or if history repeats itself. Prison can either sharpen you or harden you, and only time will show what it did to Pooh Shiesty. Law enforcement will be watching closely too. Any wrong move, any slip-up, and the system won't hesitate to pull him right back in. His next chapter won't just define his career, it'll decide his future. With a return to prison always looming, the stakes for Pooh Shiesty's second chance at freedom couldn't be higher. The story of the Williams family is really a story about cycles, violence, poverty, and pressure passed down from one generation to the next. Mob Boss's criminal path helped shape Pooh Shiesty's choices, even after music success opened doors most people never get to see. But this story isn't just about downfall, It's also about loyalty, survival, and family bonds that refuse to snap under pressure. The Williams family faced murder cases, federal indictments, tragic losses, and long prison sentences, and still they never folded. Their influence on Memphis, both in the streets and in music, runs deep and can't be ignored. Mob Boss helped pioneer the blueprint of mixing music businesses with illegal operations. Pooh Shiesty proved that raw, authentic street stories could break into the mainstream without watering anything down. At the same time, their journey exposes a harsh reality. Young people raised where violence feels normal often see crime as the only path forward. That truth sits at the heart of this entire story, loud and unavoidable. Despite having access to everything money could buy, Pooh Shiesty couldn't fully escape the conditioning of his childhood. That's the real tragedy. The same traits that helped the family survive and thrive in the streets: loyalty, fearlessness, and a willingness to use violence became the very things that pushed everything toward collapse. They were too real for a world that rewards image over substance, too authentic for an industry that often separates the art from the life behind it. But Pooh Shiesty's story isn't finished yet. He still has the chance to become the one who breaks the cycle, the family member who turns talent into something lasting, who builds instead of destroys. Whether he takes that path or repeats the mistakes that haunted generations before him remains an open question. What is certain is that when he comes home, Memphis will be watching. The same streets that shaped him will be waiting to see if prison and success changed him, or if he's still willing to risk everything for respect and money. The Shiesty family raised a rap star, but they also raised a product of the streets he could never fully leave behind. That's the real tragedy and the real challenge. How do you honor where you came from without being destroyed by it? For Pooh Shiesty, that question will define the rest of his life. The family that raised him gave him the tools to survive one of the most dangerous environments in America. Now he has to decide whether those same tools can help him build a better future, or if they'll continue to be instruments of his own destruction. The Shiesty legacy is still being written, and the next chapter begins the moment Pooh Shiesty walks out of federal prison. Whether it becomes a story of redemption or repeated mistakes will depend on the lesson he's learned and the choices he makes when the streets start calling again. The Williams family name will always be tied to Memphis street culture, but it doesn't have to be tied to tragedy. Pooh Shiesty has a chance to redefine what that name means, to prove that success doesn't have to cost freedom or life itself. That's the real test of his character and the ultimate measure of his family's legacy. Can the cycle finally be broken? Or is history doomed to repeat itself until there's nothing left but memories and regrets? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the story is far from over. If you're rocking with real stories, real consequences, and the truth behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe to Rap Uncovered and turn on notifications right now. The streets never sleep, and we're just getting started. We drop heat every single day, and tomorrow's upload is going to be even crazier, even deeper, and absolutely unmissable. Smash that like button, share this with all your homeboys, and drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what you think. We'll catch you in the next one, right here at Rap Uncovered, where the truth of the streets lives.